welcome back to Beanie's Hobbies. I know it's been a while, but in this video we are going to be taking a look at this Creality Sermoon D1, and we are going to be installing a BLTouch kit into it. Now, Creality have actually finally released the BLTouch firmware, so I'm going to walk you through installation of the BLTouch, and also we're going to have to flash the firmware on the main board, and we're also going to have to flash the firmware on the screen. So let's get into this and I'll run you through everything you need. Okay, so first up you're going to need obviously your BLTouch. Now, nice guys over at Technology Outlet over here in the UK, kind enough to send me the kit. Now obviously in the kit we will have the bracket that holds the BLTouch, and then obviously we've got the BLTouch and the cable itself. Now the cable that this thing uses is this one right here, which is exactly the same cable as the Ender 6. So you'll need the micro pico blade or whatever it is, the one that goes on the BLTouch you'll need on both ends of your cable. And obviously you'll need the BLTouch itself. The rest of the wires inside this you won't need. So the only thing out here you'll need is the BLTouch itself, and obviously the nuts and bolts to hold the BLTouch to the bracket. So that's what you'll need for that. So like I say, if you guys head over to technologyoutlet.co.uk over here in the UK, you can pick up this kit, which will come with everything you need to get BLTouch up and running on your printer. And obviously the only thing you will need to do is obviously head to Creality's official website and download the BLTouch firmware. But I'll show you where to get that a bit later on in the video. The first job is going to obviously be to plug this cable into this board. Now the port is just down here, just above my finger. So we're going to start off by plugging the end of the cable into this. I'm going to run it up through this, so I'm going to take this zip tie off. I'm going to run the cable up through this tube so it's all nice and neat down at the hot end. So now when you plug in the cable in, obviously make sure you plug it in the right way round. Very gently just push it in. Like I say, if you guys have got an Ender 6 and you've done this on an Ender 6, it'll be exactly the same process. So as you can see down here, I've just plugged the cable in. So what I'm going to do now, I'll do this off camera, I'm going to run this cable up through. Oh, let's zoom you guys out so you can actually see what I am talking about. I mean, obviously you don't have to run it through, you could just, if you want to, zip tie it to it, but I want to do it neatly, so I'm just going to remove this zip tie, run the cable through, and then I will return once I have done that. Okay, so as you can see, I'll just zoom you guys in a bit. I've fed the cable up through this tube, around and down. Now what I'm going to do is I'm basically just going to put a little zip tie through this cage to hold this in place. Then obviously the cable's going to run around the side here and plug into our BLTouch. Now we'll end up putting a couple of zip ties around this tube, but I'm not going to do that just yet, because once I've finished installing the BLTouch, I then want to go and replace this guide tube, well, guide roller. I don't like that design. So from Technology Outlet, this is actually from their, I'll get it to focus, there we go. This is from Technology Outlet's Thingiverse account, which I will share down in the description below. Now this is a lot better for feeding the filament than this. So basically this is just 3D printed part. It will replace this one, and then we'll have a length of PTFE tube coming out at the end of it, feeding up through this tube and then down obviously into the extruder, and that will then feed a lot smoother than it just flopping around in mid-air through these, well, poorly designed rollers. But I will do that after I've got the BLTouch installed. So obviously now we've got our cable in place, we will need to mount the BLTouch bracket, which I have right here. So we'll take a look Now with the BLTouch bracket, it does come with the 2 screws. So there we go. And it obviously also comes with a nice 3D printed bracket. So this is going to attach obviously to the side of the print head, like so. Also, I'll get you a bit of camera angle when I do it, and then we can obviously mount the BLTouch to this. Right, so now I'm going to install the bracket. So you can see here on the print head, down the bottom here, there are 2 holes. Now these are obviously the holes where our screws are going to fit in to hold the bracket in place. So like I said, this is our 3D printed bracket, so obviously we need to make sure we put it on the right way round. Okay, so you're going to need to fit it this way around. So we'll just line that up and then just go ahead and screw it in. So you're going to end up with a bracket looking something like that. Fixes in with 2 screws, so we've got one in, we'll just get the other side one in. Just snug them up. Okay, so there we have our bracket installed. So up next we're going to need to obviously install the BLTouch to that bracket. So obviously we'll remove our BLTouch. So I'm just obviously removing it. Now obviously the wire that it comes with we don't need, so we can obviously just remove that wire. So all we actually need is the BLTouch. And then obviously we need, out of the little baggie, going to need the nuts and bolts and washers out of this so we can attach it. So we'll grab the 2 bolts, 2 nuts, a couple of washers, and we need to mount obviously the BLTouch. It's going to be mounted this way around, so the connector is pointing towards the print head, and that is going to bolt up underneath like so. Okay, so I'll do that off camera. Now before we bolt it up, we obviously just want to get the end. There is a pre-cut hole in this bracket. Well, it's not cut, obviously it's pre-printed. So we can drop the wire down through the hole, and then I can obviously plug the BLTouch in first, obviously making sure you plug it in the right way around. Obviously if you screw this in first, you're never going to get the wire in. So just screw that, plug that in first, which I am struggling to do. It's quite cold in my workshop at the moment. I can't actually feel my fingers. There we go. So BLTouch plugged in. That's obviously going to sit under there that way around, so obviously the BLTouch is pointing out. Pull up the slack, bolt it in, and then obviously this end is then finished. Tidy up the cables, and then we're ready to flash the firmware. So I'll get this bolted on and then I'll come back. There we are, guys. I've now got BLTouch bolted into place. Just need to do a little bit of cable tidying. Basically with the BLTouch will come some small little cable ties which are out of focus. So basically what I'm going to do, there's probably other ways you can do this. You probably could have ran this all the way down the tube through the inside, but I didn't particularly want to have to take the whole hot end apart. So all I'm going to do is literally put a zip tie, bending the end of the zip tie over, so when I can slot it in, turn it, and that'll then come out of the cage. Top tip. You can always pull any excess wire back through the tube up the other way, make sure it's all neat and tidy. There we go, so I've just zip tied that there in place. I'm also just going to put another zip tie around here where this cable's actually coming out, just to hold it all nice and neat, stop the cable from pulling out. Like so. Snip off the excess. Job's a good one. Right guys, so before we get in the firmware while I'm working on the top of the machine, I might as well go ahead and replace this with this guide tube. So, I mean, this is not anything you have to do, but if you want to make your filament feed better for the sake of printing a part and getting a little bit of PTFE tube, it's well worth the slight little modification. It's only sort of a quick fix. It's only a matter of having to undo 2 screws obviously then remove this part and replace it with this part. So then just screw it into place with the screws that you've taken out. Like so, and that piece is then in place. Right, so like so we've got our bracket installed, so next we're going to need our length of PTFE tube. We're just going to push one end of the PTFE tube into this bracket, like so. Then we're going to get some cable ties, and we're just going to put a few cable ties along the tubing. Don't need many, just need a few, just to hold it into place. And then obviously we've got to trim this to length, it's far too long. And also, when you printed this, also comes with this little tiny cap, which will sit on the end of the PTFE tube before it goes down into the extruder. So we just need to cut this to the correct length. Also we need to make sure that we allow enough PTFE tube for when the printer is all the way over. So don't go and cut it too short. So we'll just snip it off. We will then pop the little cap just on the end, push the cap on the end of the PTFE tube, like so, so the filament can run through it. And that is then just going to sit there. Push some of this back. I might have cut it a little bit too long, but that will then sit down in there so the filament can then run down and through. Okay, so there we go, in place, comes up and around. Then obviously once the filament's in, it will then just sit down into there like that and feed nice and smoothly. So that's that little mod done. So obviously next job, now we've got the BLTouch installed. I have just routed the cable because there was a little bit of excess cable, but I've just tucked it up underneath. So the next job is we need to go and prepare our firmware for the main board and the screen, and then we have got to take this thing apart so we can obviously get to the screen to flash the firmware. So we shall go and prep some firmware first. Alright guys, so we're going to need to sort some firmware out. So if you head over to Creality.com, not official but just Creality.com, we're going to go support. We're going to go download, then we're going to go fully enclosed series firmware, and obviously then we're going to find the Sermoon D1, open that up, and here we have the Sermoon D1 International Edition with BLTouch software, released the 31st December 2021, so we're just going to need to click it, and obviously we're going to have to save it. Okay, so that's it. Once it's downloaded and saved, we are going to have to go into our, sorry, I've got two screens running, our things keep popping up on the other side. Right, okay, so we're going to want to extract it. I personally use 7-zip. So we have our file unzipped, and we are going to open all these folders up, and here we go. So in here we are going to, you just want to ignore the bootloader. We're going to want the mainboard firmware, which is a bin file. And okay, and we're going to want the touchscreen firmware. We're going to need the DWinset folder. So we're going to need to get some SD cards and obviously copy all this across. Alright guys, so I'm going to use the SD card that actually came with the printer to do the firmware for the main board. So I'm going to plug it in. Now what I always do is, obviously when you plug it in, I always make a backup of the files that came on the card. So I can always print my files on a nice fresh clean card. Obviously then keep these, because if I ever then sell the printer, I've always got the original files that came with it. So I'll just create a new folder and I'll just rename it and then I will then just copy all of the files off the SD card, and I'll then stick them onto my computer and save them. You can really see I've got one up here labelled Mingda. That is actually another printer that I've got for review, which will be coming up shortly. So I will copy all the files, like I say, off the SD card, then I'll format the SD card. Right guys, so I've formatted the SD card. I've now gone back obviously to my downloads, and what we're going to need to do is grab the mainboard firmware, which is a bin file. We're going to drag and drop that obviously straight onto our formatted SD card. Okay, so that's now formatted onto our, firmware is now onto our freshly formatted SD card. So we'll go ahead and we'll eject that. Next job, you're going to need to grab yourself a micro SD card so we can update the screen. So we'll need to plug our micro SD card in there, and obviously if there's anything on there you'll save it. If not, make sure we format it. So this layout, you're going to need your file system to FAT32. Make sure your allocation unit size is set to 4096 bytes. Start, and then format. Okay, then once that is then formatted, we will then need to go ahead and hang on, stand by, technical issues. Go back to our download folder, like so. Open it up into touchscreen firmware. Open it up once so you can see the DWIN set folder, and then obviously we'll need to copy that down onto our micro SD card. Okay, like so. So on our micro SD card we have the DWIN set folder. Inside that is all the updates for the touchscreen. Then obviously we can then just eject that, and then we're back to the printer. So I'll catch you guys back over there at the printer. Alright guys, I'll just power the machine up. Before we start, we shall go into settings and printer info, and we can see in there that this is running version 1.1.10. So we'll turn the machine off. We'll take our SD card that we've just put our new firmware on. I'll come around the other side of the printer so I can actually get to it. And we are going to plug it in, and then we are going to power the printer back on. You can hear the BLTouch. We've got power going to the BLTouch. Obviously the printer isn't going to recognise it yet. So now we've turned the machine back on, and we're just going to have to wait for it to flash the firmware, which can take anything from sort of 30 seconds up. Okay, so firmware is now flashed. Turn it off. Take the card out. Next thing we need to do now is update the screen. So we're going to have to flip this machine over, unscrew the bottom of the machine so we can actually get to the screen. So bear with me while I just turn this all over. Right guys, so got the base of the printer off. This is basically held on by the 4 feet, so you're going to need to undo the 4 feet, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 other screws, and the bottom plate will then come off. Be careful because obviously the cooling fan for the main board is still attached, but the part that we need to get to is the screen micro SD card slot that is located down here. Now there isn't actually an easy way of getting to it because you can't actually get in there, so what you're going to have to do is unscrew this screw and then this screw, which is actually holding the screen in place. So if we get them undone first, we can then actually get to the screen, and then hopefully we should then be able to unbolt this to get the micro SD card in there. I'm worried about trying to force it and get it in here and breaking something, so I'm going to take this apart. This is a bit of a mission to do guys, but it's going to be well worth upgrade. So let me get these unscrewed and I'll come back. Right, now with those unscrewed we can actually now get to the touchscreen. And as you'll see, there's actually no 4 more screws holding this touchscreen in place. So we can now remove those, get the touchscreen completely out to get the card in. The Creality haven't really thought about this. It's not very user friendly. One tip is when you undo these screws down here, make sure you have your hand on the inside of the printer because this thing will just fall out. Okay, so I'm going to get this screen taken out and then I'll be back again. And there we have it. It's finally out. So obviously the next job now is going to be to put the micro SD card in this slot power up the machine to install the screen firmware. Now, I can't really do this on camera because I'm going to have to hold this board because I don't like to touch anything while I'm doing the update. So let me just get this update done first, guys, and then I will be back. Alright guys, so the screen firmware is now flashed. Obviously I haven't gone any further than this, I've literally just turned it back on. So obviously when you put your micro SD card in there, the screen will go blue, and that will then run through a list of the updates. You'll know when it's finished because it will come up at the top pair and that will say end. So obviously then just turn your power off, take your micro SD card out, and then obviously you're then going to need to reassemble. So I'm going to reassemble all this, put it back together, and then we'll go through the initial setup procedure together. Right guys, so we're all back assembled. It's time to power this thing on and see what happens. So we have power to the BLTouch. Printer's booting. So we're going to go English. Okay. It's definitely changed. There we go. One other thing that I have actually forgotten to do is remove the Z end stop switch. Okay, and also for some strange reason it hasn't auto-homed. So we're not quite there yet. I think I need to have another little look at this, but we have got BLTouch up and running kind of on the Sermoon D1. So I'm going to check to see what exactly is going on with this and come back. Okay guys, no fully working. Yeah, it was literally, you just needed to unplug the end stop switch and that solved the problem straight away. So basically I've unplugged it out of the board. The only thing I need to do is just unscrew it and just take it out completely so it's out of the way. Just auto home just fine, so I'll show you that again. And obviously I haven't even removed the wrapper off the bed yet. So obviously that is now working perfectly. Let's just make sure it wasn't a fluke. We'll just go into leveling. And there we go. Inside here we can obviously then set our Z offset up. We can and then obviously measure it. We can do auxiliary leveling. We can do everything on this now that we can on the Ender 6 or any of them actually. So yeah, that is it guys. We have successfully installed BLTouch into the Creality Sermoon D1. I hope you found this of some use. If you did, drop me a thumbs up. If you want to subscribe. But isn't this just the nicest looking Creality printer so far? I mean, I love the design of this printer. I mean, yeah, I love the Ender 6, but this one is just so much better. It's just a lot more refined, a lot more nicer looking, and obviously we have dual Z as well, so this bed is nice and stable. It's be good for fast quality prints, this one actually. So yeah, stay tuned guys. We'll have some prints coming up later on down the line. But for now I thought I'd just get this out there so you guys can get it up and running on your printers too. So don't forget to check out Technology Outlook guys over here in the UK. One-stop shop for all the parts, printers, filament, you name it, they got it 3D printing wise. So check them out guys. Also don't forget the little mod here for the guide. That's available on their Thingiverse account, but I'll leave all the links down in the description below. Anyway, that's it for me now. That's it for this one, guys. I'm a bit rusty. Stay tuned, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Cheerio!